Welcome to Outlaw Woodworking. You know, the last time I drove my tractor, I started taking it on the road more. And what I found is the steering is really loose. And right here you can see I start getting a little bit of speed up here. And like you can look how much these tires are wobbling. Yeah, I really want to be able to drive this in parades eventually. Like we have a local little parade. Now here when I go around this corner, I start getting up, I got to turn one more turn, and then you'll really see it wobble. It doesn't wobble all the time. Like when you drive it slow, you really don't have any trouble. But if you know, like I'm trying to hit like fourth gear, which isn't very fast. I mean, it's like 10 or 15 miles an hour or something. But right here on this straightaway right here, I'm in fourth gear. Now watch, right up here it starts to wobble. It wobbles pretty good. And after doing some research, at first I thought, oh, I got a loose tie rod in or something. But in doing research, see right there, it's really wobbling. Okay, hopefully that gave you a couple better angles of what I'm dealing with this wobbly steering. Now, I did find out how to fix it, and basically you have to take the tins off of the front. You don't have to take the back, but actually we're going to take the back too because we're going to replace a U-joint back there. But it's got a big gear up here, and it's got a steering gear, the shaft that goes through there, and we're going to get this wobble taken care of. But at the same time, I thought I would do something fun. And you got a couple threads up here, a couple bolt holes. And what I wanted to do is have like a flag mount. So you could run like 2 flags on each side. So if I ever wanted to like drive it in a parade, that would be kind of cool. So we're going to do 2 things today. We're going to try to fix the steering with this new gear and shaft, and I'll show you how sloppy that is in a minute. And then we'll 3D print a little flag mount for here. Anyway, those are the 2 things we're going to do today. Let's get started.
There he goes, it's a working man. He's trying to make a living any way he can. And he'll break his back for $1 or $2. Oh, there ain't no shame in what he do. Oh, work it out.
Okay, you might be thinking, where are you going to get these old parts for this old tractor? And there's a company called Steiner New Parts for Old Tractors, and that's where you're going to get it. And let me show you all the parts on the website and the cost of them, and I'll show you what I ordered. Okay, here's one of the parts. So basically I needed 4 parts to make this thing happen. This is the steering worm shaft right here. Part number IHS 750, and it was $128.95. And then I also needed this steering sector gear, part number IHS 746, that's $89. And then the next thing I needed was a worm shaft bearing, IHS 2945. Let's see where that right there. So I also needed one of these bearings, 975. And then the last part I needed was a steering universal joint, ABC 166. Let's see if that comes up. Now here's where I made the mistake. Here was my mistake, and it wasn't the fault of Steiner. Now I got all the parts from Steiner New Parts for Old Tractors. Now if you look at this universal joint, it tells you right off the bat right here, check measurement before ordering, include yoke pins and grease cert, 7/8 diameter shaft on both ends, not keyed. Now, that was wrong. So whichever one they sent me was 7/8 on one side and 1 inch on the other side. And I'm sure it was my fault. So let's go to the installation and I'll show you what I did wrong. Okay, for starters, the installation of all this stuff was pretty easy. On the front, basically to get to this steering gear, you take 2 bolts off each side of this front tin, And then you also need to take the radiator cap off to lift the tin off of there. And you can see these are the 2 bolts on the other side. The funny thing is, there's 4 bolts and all of them were different sizes. So I was definitely going to fix that. I ended up getting some new bolts for that front tin. It was kind of funny that 4 of them were all different sizes. But anyway, right here is the gears up in the top of this. And basically it's 4 bolts, take that off, and you can look right down into the gear right there. Now, the gear takes a pretty big socket. I think it was an 1.5 inch socket. And I had to test it. Now you can see right there, I was kind of trying to show how loose it was in there. Now this socket has a cotter pin, and then you also have this other socket on the other side for the steering shaft. And basically, the top one is 1.5 inches, and the other one is, I believe, 1.25 inches. I could be wrong, but so right here, the gear is a half moon gear. So the new gear that I got is basically a full circle. So you can actually, because now right here, I basically have to undo this U-joint up here, and then I can take this steering shaft completely off. And it wasn't hard to get off, actually. I tapped it a couple times with a hammer, I think, but it slid right off. You do have to loosen, there's a steering part on the front that you have to loosen also. And here I kind of separate this a little bit to get it to pull apart. It actually came off pretty easy. Once I got that off, I could just basically thread this thing right out of there. And then I needed to take you need to save the nut, because the new steering shaft doesn't come with the nut. Now right here, I dropped the new gear in there already, and I'm basically tightening it down. Now, I was trying to use the old cotter pin because I didn't have a new cotter pin, and that turned out to kind of be a pain in the ass. I did get some new cotter pins since then, so I'm probably going to change this out later. Now right here I got the new steering shaft also, and I basically clamp it down, and I needed to take the nut off of the old steering shaft because you need to save that nut, because the new one does, like I said, it doesn't come with a nut. So I set that aside, and then I basically get rid of this, the old steering shaft, and I'm going to save that just in case someone needs one. I don't know how bad it was, but it's getting a new one. So right here I press on the new bearing, and then basically put on the old nut, and it was ready to go back in. Now I took and greased this thing up really good. I got my grease gun and I packed this thing with grease, packed the bearing, and then I also packed the worm gear pretty good before I slid it in there. And right here you can see it just slides right in real easy. So that's a brand new drive shaft, or not drive shaft, steering shaft. And basically I thread it all the way in there, and then I put the outside stopper nut on, and that part was done. Next up, it was time to, basically I needed to grease, now it calls for a high flow grease, but I went to the 2 different auto parts stores, and I didn't find anything that said high flow grease. So once I get this thing tightened down pretty good, it's got a couple shims in it, and I had it too tight, so I took one of the shims back out, and then retightened it and reassembled it. Here I'm basically packing this thing full of grease, and I'm just using the same grease that I use on my excavator and my tool cat. Like I said, I tried to find high flow grease, but I couldn't find any anywhere. So I get it all greased up, clean off the top really good, and then put this cap back on. And that was pretty simple. There's not really any gasket on it. It's just bolted down on the top. I guess it could have a gasket on it. It might be nice. Maybe in the future, if I take it off again, I'll put a gasket. And then up here, it was time to change this U-joint. And basically what you have to do, you have to take a Sawzall and cut the old U-joint off of there. and to fit this new one on there. And this is when I all of a sudden found out I had the wrong U-joint, but there was a way to fix it, and I'll show you how I fixed it. Basically, what I did was I got it on the new sleeve, and then I bought a bushing, a 7/8 to 1 inch diameter bushing. And luckily I bought 2 of them, because the first one that I put in there, I ruined it. I just smashed the hell out of it. And then the second one, I got it to go in there really nice. And here you can see I'm basically bolting up the steering the opposite side. So I got both sides bolted up with some grade 8 bolts and some lock nuts. And that was ready to go. Now I did notice this nut was kind of close to my gas tank, so I ended up spinning it around and grinding that off a little bit. And then all I did was tighten up this top piece, the top little bushing up here that kind of holds the steering wheel from going in and out. And that part was done. It was time to take it for a ride and test it out. Now here you can see the 3D printed flag holder that I made for the front of it. And it was really easy to print. Let me show you a little video of it printing. Now if you have a Farmall tractor and it has these 2 threaded holes in the front and you want one of these, just send me an email. And here you can see it on the front of the tractor. Okay, that was a huge improvement. Now, my microphone skills need some work, but there's only a couple things that I think I would change. There's 2 bearings underneath the big gear in the top. Right here, I'll point them out here in a second. They basically on the top and the bottom, right up in the top there, and then also in the bottom there. And I think if I change those 2 bearings, it would even increase the performance even better. However, that was a huge improvement. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Later.
There he goes, it's a working man. He's trying to make a living any way he can. And he'll break his back for $1 or $2. Oh, there ain't no shame in what he do. Oh, work it out.